All right, welcome back. We're starting to get into the last kind of 10 or so minutes of this conversation. Just before the break, we were busy discussing the influence of social media in the media space now, because we can't not call it part of the media. It is. And you just had one final thought before we get to the floor again.
Yes, Peter. The ANC welcomes the advent of social and mobile media in general. It has indeed revolutionized communication, but as Karima says, it must be exercised with the responsibilities thereof that goes with any of the rights. But I think what we need to appreciate is that it needs to extend to the working class. Currently, there are questions of affordability. Some people cannot have their bundles to be able to be in this discourse. So, and other people in Mahambeni, in Mvenyane, even when they have smartphones, they can't reach out onto internet and online, because the infrastructure in those areas is still either maybe 1G or 2G, and therefore they are not being part of this communication. So what we need to strive for is a situation where every citizen has got access to any form of media, diverse media, and is able to participate in this democracy.
Okay. Right, I'm going to take 3 questions from the floor, very briefly, and get some brief answers, starting with Simone Herodine on table number something. Simone?
Good morning. My question centers on community newspapers, and especially so-called sunshine journalism or patriotic reporting. Whenever there's the discourse about this, it seems to be community newspapers aren't recognized. I mean, our circulation figures, both with Caxton and with independent media, probably outclasses all the printed media put together. And those are actually the stories that reflect the communities of Lusikisiki and Kukunau. So, especially to our 2 panelists on the side there that seems to be saying that the stories aren't getting out there. Why are community newspapers always overlooked at getting the stories out there when our circulation figures are absolutely sky high? Thank you.
Overlooked by who?
It's often overlooked in the discourse. It is said that, for example, sunshine journalism or patriotic journalism, it seems to be the discourse is always about the Sunday Times, the Mail and Guardian, the New Age, the Cape Times, etc., the Argus. But saying that those stories are not printed in those newspapers, and it's not acknowledged that community newspapers are actually the papers that are printing those stories, the feel-good stories, as well as the so-called good government stories that President Jacob Zuma has asked us to print with his comments from Mexico, etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Simone. Kwandile.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for giving me 16 minutes. Peter, I just want to engage Prof. Anton Harber. Please, Prof, don't reduce appeals tribunal to a shrinking newsroom, and so engage as Karima is doing. Let's see if it's wrong. Let's see how do we improve it. But don't reduce it into SABC, what, and so. I don't think it's proper. But the reality is that 2 decades in democracy, transformation of the media is better with the proviso that, 1, you should be seen to be moving with the multinationals, all these big conglomerates within the media. That is the only way you'll be seen to be progressive within that space. You should be seen to be having a dissenting view, amongst the majority of South Africa. If you are having the dissenting view, then you are better off. And then you'll be embraced by these multinationals. You should be seen, Peter, to be criticizing those who are in power for you to be embraced by these multinationals. So for me, it is wrong, and it's high time that we move away from the so-called soulless journalists, the so-called independent. Let's create our own institutions and move away from this, because 2 decades in democracy, we're still fighting transformation. And why can't we create our own things and move away? These soulless people must just do their thing. You see, okay. We can't be doing that.
I'm going to have to move on. Thank you very much, Fawzia.
My question is, and I often think about this, I think the problem with our media industry is that we are in many ways a reflection of the society we are in. which it is totally untransformed, politically, socially, economically. We may have political power, but we still remain essentially, you know, at the beck and call of the establishment and the status quo as it was. And that is why it's so difficult to make the changes we need to make. Whilst I think the issue of a tribunal is too drastic, I don't agree with that at all. But we need to start changing mindsets. And the question we should be asking is, how do we do that? That, for me, is the basic question.
All right, so quick comments, 30 seconds each, kind of whoever wants to throw the pot in. You've been accused.
Look, I mean, I think there's a place for profit-based media. I would like to see more non-profit media. I think it would add enormously. Public interest motivated media, I'm absolutely for. We need much more of it. We don't have enough. We need much more state support for public interest media. I would argue that's something that the government can do really positively. And I agree that community media is extremely important. It needs support, it needs its voice out there, and that it is often underplayed. So I would agree with that person.
Okay, 30 seconds.
Yes. Firstly, let's understand what community media is. That's media owned and controlled by the community. Caxton media, those local knock and drops, that's not community media. So yes, indeed, we must support community media, which is media owned and controlled by the communities that they serve, and we agree there. We're not, as the ANC, we're not promoting sunshine journalism, no. We're promoting, we'll continue to fight and promote free, independent, fair, truthful, accurate, balanced reporting. Tell the good story. It is a story and it is newsworthy. Also tell the other story. Lastly, I think the other point that Kondle raises in terms of transformation is very critical. And this is where this discussion, when it goes to Parliament, is going to be dealing with a whole set of discussions. Transformation, not only in terms of equity, but in terms of inclusive society. The media must be transformed so it does reflect an inclusive society. And part of that discussion will then speak to, in the advent of social and mobile media, what innovative models that we need to come up with so that the diverse media that we want into the future, now and into the future, is able to respond to all these realities of our country, both in terms of diversity of content, languages. When you land in a South African airport, you get newspapers, and you are limited. It's not like you have a choice of getting any other newspaper. You get newspapers that come from the mainstream that are in English and Afrikaans. We need to have newspapers that reflect South Africa.
All right, so Mzi, whose fault is that? I mean, no one's stopping anyone waking up and starting a newspaper. Why is it that we keep on saying the ones that are there must change?
The barriers to entry. We need to transform, address the question of the anti-competitive behavior that exists.
People are not buying newspapers anymore.
Let's just take a step back to say, yes, the print media, for instance, specifically, it is shrinking.
Yeah.
But it's not like collapse, you know. It shrinks by about 1.5% a year. It's still a 9%, you know, advertising, the share of advertising, for instance, spent in the is about 9 billion. So that's not small change. And some of the newspapers, you know, the media groups are huge businesses. I mean, you know, Media 24 is about 7 billion or somewhere there. And, you know, TMG will be about 3 billion. Independent media will be about 2.5 billion. So it's a multi-billion rand business. So it's not small by any stretch of imagination. What you need is, of course, the audience has immigrated to social media, to other digital platforms, but the money is still trapped in the traditional media. That's the irony of the current situation. So
it's the private sector that keeps putting the money in the same places and not thinking about it?
No, I don't think it is the private sector necessarily. I think, you know, of course, most of the media in South Africa, the mainstream media in South Africa, apart from the SABC and others, are owned by private individuals. And I think it has been post-94, that has been a particular problem in the beginning, where there were deals done, to try and, as part of transforming the media. For instance, in 1996, there was a deal that was done, bought what is now TMG, which was then Jonic Communications, that became Jonic Communications. It should have been a very good basis to transform the media, but of course that opportunity was lost because of the fact that you had capitalists without capital. And they had been also who actually owned these assets, but then they had been told that no, don't touch, don't interfere in terms of transformation and anything. Media must be left alone. I think that was a mistake. All right,
we're running out of time, and I just, Karima, I've got this tweet about this question here. I'm not going to go to the person, but favoritism in the media. And I get a sense that political parties saying that they're being attacked. The DA feels they're being attacked. The ANC feels they're being attacked. You name them, everyone's being attacked. So what's the story here? What is the real story? Is it just that we're
I think if the people in power, whether they're in politics or in the economy, or even in labor elites, believe that they're being attacked, then maybe some of us are doing our jobs. I think the issue for me generally is that the media is not monolithic. It's really important for Lumko to understand that when he speaks. We are not one thing. And so we need to be looked at in terms of our track record and what it is that we do as media institutions and companies. The second is that there's a lot that government can actually do to shift the narrative, to shift issues around ownership, to encourage diverse voices. For us at Independent, it wasn't enough to have the company come back home to South Africa. It's also important, because we're not the first black-owned newspaper group and media group, but it is important to shift the narrative. We are about telling a comprehensive story. We cannot just be about what is wrong with South Africa. We've got to shift the mindset, like Fozia said. And I think that is probably the biggest challenge, because we've had ownership changes, but the narrative has remained the same, and I think that's our biggest challenge.
Well, social media is going to force you, but I'm just leave it there. And I gave you the last word because you're the only woman on the panel. So I'm going to leave it there and say thank you very much indeed to my guests, Lumko, Mtimde, Mzimkulu Malunga, Karima Brown, Joe Thloloe, and Anton Harber. Thank you very much indeed for helping us with this conversation. Journalists here, members of the media, thank you so much. And you at home as well, thank you. Make up your own mind. I have no doubt you are going to express yourself either on YouTube, Twitter, you name it. You're going to have your way. So I look forward to seeing what your thoughts have been. Have a great day, everybody. From all of us here, take care.